Well, good morning. My name is Adam. I'm the senior minister here at Corinth Christian Church. If you're one of our guests this morning, we want to say welcome. Thank you so much for coming out today. Whether you came out just to say hey to mom or to make her happy or whatever it is, we're just really glad that you're here. And I would love a chance to meet you. I'll be standing right here in front of the stage after the service is over. Please come on up, introduce yourself, and let me give you a gift just to say thanks for coming to see us today. If you're joining us online, we want to say hello and hope that you're having a good day as well. And we hope that by tuning in online, you can at least tell your mom that you kind of went to church today. And we also know, too, that most people check us out online before they ever step in here. And so we hope that we'll see you here in person very, very, very soon. Well, with it being Mother's Day, one of the things that moms are known for are their little sayings that they say to their kids all the time. And they say them, they kind of repeat them and repeat them and repeat them, things that just kind of drill themselves into our own heads. And so this past week on Facebook, I just kind of put it out there and just say, so what are some of the things that your mom used to say whenever you were growing up, or things that you're kind of like your favorite saying of your mom that you'll never forget? And we got several of them. I just thought I'd share a few of them with you. Thought it was kind of fun. Like one of the things that somebody said, I remember my mom saying this, actually multiple people said this one. We've probably all heard our mom say this one, was this: I brought you into this world and I can take you out of it. Anybody's mom ever say that to you? How many of y'all believed that your mom could do that? I definitely felt that way. I liked this one. This might be a little deep for right now, but here we go. You have to be young and stupid before you can become old and wise. That's pretty good right there. That's good wisdom from a mom. Here's some more wisdom from a mom. I'm going to rip your arm off and beat you with the bloody stump. Yep. And you probably deserve it if she did that, too. So that's somebody else's mom. You used to always say, a couple of people's moms said this, pretty is as pretty does. Heard that. All right, this one, I like this one. If you lay down with dogs, you'll end up with fleas. There's truth to there. Then I love this one too. Whenever you'd ask your mom, so what's for dinner? Take it or leave it. That is what is for dinner tonight. My mom had things like that she would say whenever we were growing up. I remember anytime my brother and I, we would say something like, oh, we can't do this, she'd look at us, she'd go, you know what? Can't diet in the poorhouse. Get up and do it yourself. And that's how she did. She would also say to me sometimes, especially when I was about 13, 15 years old, she'd say, if you keep rolling your eyes in the back of your head, they're going to get stuck there. She was a liar. I mean, it didn't happen. But then there's another one that my mom said that I still am not 100% for sure what it means. I think I know what it means. I'll probably have to ask her this afternoon again what it means. But my brother and I, whenever we would complain about anything, we'd whine. She'd say, you know what? You would complain if you were hung with a new rope. I don't know what that means, all right? There's something there. I think what it means is you would complain about everything and anything, and you would complain about the things you shouldn't even be complaining about, because you should be complaining that you're being hung, but you're complaining about the kind of rope. I think that's what it means, all right? I think that's what it means. Just get your perspective in order there. Last week we started a brand new sermon series called Quitter, and in it we're just talking about that there are things that we need to give up and we need to quit doing because they're keeping us from what God would want for us to have in our lives. And so like last week we said we're going to give up our excuses. That's what we're talking about. We're give up our excuses. Well, this week we're going to be talking about this idea of complaining and whining and griping and complaining. And we're going to say we're going to give up our complaining. In fact, on the count of three, I want you to say no more complaining with me, all right? 1, 2, 3, no more complaining. Just no more complaining. But the problem is we love complaining. We love to whine, we love to complain, and we love it because things don't always go our way. Things aren't always the way that we think that they should be. And so it's just so easy for us to find ourselves in this mode and this mindset to where we're just complaining about the way things are because it's just so easy to focus on things that are wrong. In fact, I would just go out and say this, that in our day and age, we probably complain more than anybody else's generation that has been up to our point. And here's the thing, too, that we complain to more people than anybody has ever complained to because we have social media and the internet. Because, back in the day, it's like if you complained, the only people you could complain to are like the people that sat at your dinner table or the people that are at, the water cooler at work. Now, if I don't like something, I can tweet it out, I can post it on Facebook, and I can complain to hundreds, to thousands, to millions of people, and they can all know how I don't like something. Isn't it great? How much and who many, the amount of people we can complain to. In fact, one of the things that we do, a lot of times, like what we like to do whenever we go out on a trip is I'll open open up the Yelp app. You guys know Yelp, the app there? If I'm looking for a place to eat, because I don't want to go to Chili's or, those kind of, I want to eat where the locals eat. I want to find those hole-in-the-wall kind of places. And so we'll open up the Yelp app and do that. And one of the things that's really helpful about Yelp is you can look and you can see, the ratings. You don't want to go to a restaurant that has 1 star because, you don't want to end up in the hospital. That's not what you want. You want something that's going to be good. And so you just kind of use those ratings to kind of help you understand what's going on. Well, people do this for travel destinations as well. And one of the fun things to do, if you just want to just have a little bit of fun, is look up 1-star Yelp ratings and listen to what people complain about, because it's amazing what people complain about. In fact, I was looking up on the national parks, just 3 of our national parks, listening to people complain about our national parks. It's crazy stuff. Here are 3 1-star ratings, reviews of different parks. Like the first one is Death Valley. Okay, you guys know Death Valley. It's out there, California, Nevada, just there. It is a desert. It is called Death Valley, right? We all understand it's called Death Valley. Things do not live in Death Valley. It is not life's meadow. It is Death Valley. You'd think going to Death Valley, you'd understand this. And I'm trying to set this up because of this. This is what one person wrote. Don't waste your time. I have lived in places ranging from by the ocean to the desert, and I have to say, this is the ugliest place I have ever seen. Most deserts at least have some color to them, creating their own special beauty, but not here. There is a bit of color near the entrance and a tiny bit inside. Otherwise, I paid $20 for nothing but nasty rock and salt. Death Valley, all right? You went to Death Valley. What were you thinking? All right, this next one is about Yosemite, which is out in California, the Sierra Mountains that are there. Just gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Most people think that. This person didn't. They said, it was a terrible experience. We drove into the park and were unable to find parking anywhere. After 2 hours of searching for a parking space, we ended up leaving the park without using our $150 tram tickets. How about you cut down some of the surrounding burned trees and make another parking lot or 5? Just cut the trees down at the national park so we can park. That's funny right there. I don't care. Then Carlsbad Caverns out in New Mexico. Just really incredible just beauty there. Most people think that, except for this person. It says, well, unless you find big caves and rocks overwhelmingly fascinating, well, then skip this. Of all the national parks we have visited, this is by far the most boring. If you've never been inside a cave or seen a picture of a cave, this might interest you. Otherwise, don't waste your time, energy, or money. So evidently, Carlsbad Caverns is only good for people who like caverns, okay, and caves. Otherwise, just stay away. It's just amazing. A lot of times we just kind of view complaining as venting. Just want to get this off my chest. Just want to get this out in the open because I don't want to internalize it. I just got to get it out there. And on the surface, it seems harmless. I mean, it really does. It doesn't seem like it would be that big of a deal. But really, what they're finding, and this isn't like a Christian thing. This is a people thing. Okay, this is just people all over. They've started to understand this. Is that venting and just complaining is very harmful. It really is. The University of Stanford did a study, and what they have found is that a half hour of complaining. Now, how long is a half hour? 30 minutes. Okay, a few of us know that. Okay, it's about 30 minutes of every day. Just a half hour of complaining every day physically causes brain damage to us. It actually damages our brains. What it does is it peels back the neurons in our hippocampus. Okay, and so it's actually doing some damage to it, the part of our brain that's used for problem solving and cognitive function. And that doesn't matter if you are the one complaining or if you are just listening to somebody complain. You are literally damaging your brain by doing that. And over time, what they find is that complaining becomes this habit. And even if you're not a complainer, if you surround yourself with complainers, you will become a complainer. Is what takes place. Then they also found, too, that venting floods our bloodstream with cortisol, which is a stress hormone, does a lot of damage to our body. And so what happens is we start to tell ourselves, we just need to get it off our chest. But each time we do, we end up getting upset all again because it floods us with cortisol. And then what they found is that each time you bring it back up, you find yourself being 10 to 12 times more aggravated than you were before. You thought you were doing something harmless, but you're actually doing something harmful. And so what you're doing, you're harming yourself. You're physically just killing yourself by complaining. Now, as people of faith, we don't find that to be that surprising, do we? Because we know that not only is it, physically damaging, and we know that, one of the things that God wants for us is not to be complainers. We know that it causes spiritual damage to ourselves as well. Because it causes us to just, keep us from what God wants for us, causes us to miss His blessings, and it really can stunt our growth if we're not going to if we're going to be complainers. And that's why we need to be quitters when it comes to complaining. So I want you to say it with me again on the count of 3. No more complaining. 1, 2, 3. No more complaining. We're going to give it up. But it's a problem that's old. It's been around for a long time. In fact, we're going to look at Exodus chapters 15, 16, 17, and Numbers 11 here today. So if you want to try to keep up with me, you can. But go to Exodus 15. And we're going to see that, in the very, very beginning of the people of God's existence, this was a problem for them. So Exodus 15, here's everything that has just taken place. Let me summarize this. The people of Israel have been in slavery in Egypt for 400 years. Okay, 400 years, been making bricks and all kinds of incredible different things for them. And then finally God hears their cry, sends Moses, and Moses goes to Pharaoh, let my people go, let my people go, let my people go. After 10 plagues, Pharaoh finally relents and says, all right, I'll let your people go. And then they're leaving, and as they're leaving, Pharaoh changes his mind, sends his army to go back after them. They find themselves right in front of the Red Sea. God does a great big miracle. You guys remember the movie, right? 10 Commandments. A great big miracle. He parts the Red Sea. The people walk across on dry land. As soon as they get across, the sea falls in on Pharaoh's army. They're all drowned. They're all wiped out. And the people of God are finally free. And so you would think with everything that God has been doing, with the blessings, the plagues, with all the things He's been doing, that there would be absolutely nothing for the people to complain about, right? Wrong. Here we go. Exodus chapter 15, verse 22. This is what it says. It says, then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. And for 3 days, you might want to underline 3 days. For 3 days, they traveled in the desert without finding water. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. And that is why the place is called Marah. And so the people grumbled against Moses, saying, well, what are we to drink? Now, how many days are we past walking through the Red Sea on dry ground? 3 days. It takes 3 days for the people of God to start going, we're going to die. This isn't going to work. God brought us out here so we could just die of thirst. And, I know they did the plagues. I know He did all those other kind of things, but there's no way He can provide water for us. We're just going to all die out here. Just begin to complain immediately. Well, it doesn't stop. Verse 2 of chapter 16 says, in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. And the Israelites said to them, if only we had died in the Lord's hand in Egypt. And there we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. So now they're hungry, and they begin to wish, where do they want to go back to? They want to go back to Egypt. And they're looking back and they're like, yeah, we were slaves and never had a day off. And they abused us and that whole they were killing all of our sons thing. But at least we had meat back there. At least we had pot roast for dinner. I mean, man, it was so much better there. You know what they want to do? They're wanting to trade freedom for the whip. It's really what they want to do. And it just really goes to show us that, you can get the people out of slavery, but it takes a little while to get the slavery out of the people. And that's what's going on here. They just don't say, well, God does something miraculous. He provides them with manna, which in Hebrew literally means, what is it? Because nobody knew what the stuff was. But we're going to call it this. We're going to call it heavenly frosted flakes, okay? It is what it is. So you guys know Frosted Flakes is cereal. It's sweet. It tastes good. And it's out there. And so what God does is like, all right, I'm going to provide food for you. So every morning they would wake up and there would just be this heavenly cereal just all over the ground. And they would be able to get it and have enough for the day. And God provided for them day and day after day. He heard their cry. He provided the food that they were complaining about. And He's like, okay, now they've got a free meal from God every single day. It tastes good. It's not rice cakes. It's Frosted Flakes, And so He's like, this is something good. So there's nothing less to complain about, right? Wrong. Look at the next chapter, chapter 17, verse 2. So they quarreled with Moses and said, give us water to drink. And Moses replied, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test? But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. And they said, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst? They've brought the animals into it now, y'all. They're like, don't forget the animals. They're here as well. Why haven't you done this? I mean, here they're about to kill Moses and his brother Aaron. because they're thirsty. I mean, they've already forgotten that just a few weeks ago, God provided water for them in Marah. They've already forgotten that just a few weeks ago that God sent them through the Red Sea and just provided for them. They've already forgotten that the fact that every single morning they wake up and there is cereal all over the ground for them. And so God, in his mercy, he listens to them and he brings water out of a rock and he provides water for them. And so now they have plenty of water, heavenly cereal every single morning, nothing else to complain about, right? Wrong. Numbers 11, this is what happens. So in Numbers 11, it says this, the rabble with them. And so anytime the rabble shows up, you know nothing good is about to take place, because don't hang out with the rabble. The rabble with them began to crave other food. And again, the Israelites started wailing and said, oh, if only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost. Outside of the slavery thing, at no cost, we had all this fish to eat. And also the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and garlic. But now we have lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna. What a bunch of whiners, right? I mean, can you imagine just somebody like walking up to a pantry or a refrigerator, opening it up, it being filled with all kinds of food, and just sitting there and just going, we don't have anything to eat in this house. Has that ever happened with you? That's exactly what's going on. They're like, you know what? We're tired of having tacos every Tuesday. We need some variety in our life. We're tired of it. Give us some meat. Well, look at what it says in verse 10. So Moses heard the people of every family wailing at the entrance to their tents. And then listen. And the Lord became exceedingly angry. And Moses was troubled. See, their complaints made God angry. They were just too much. Their lack of gratitude was too great. And so literally what it says is his anger burned against them. Now, 1,600 years later, the Apostle Paul would talk about these events whenever he was writing to one of his churches. And this is what he says in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 11. He says, these things, talking about all these things we just talked about. He said, these things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the culmination of the ages has come. Paul is looking back at these and says, you know, we really need to learn from these things that are going on back here. They're examples for us. They're warnings for us, and we need to really pick them up. So what can we learn about complaining based off of these examples that we just read? I want to just share with you two things. If you're taking notes, you might want to write these two things down. The first thing is this, is complaining offends God. Complaining offends God. It bothers him. His anger burned against him is what it says in Numbers 11, verse 10. We are told 9 times throughout the Bible that the Lord is slow to anger. He's 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 slow to anger. But one of the things that makes God angry are complaints. Just complaining people. This is one of the things. It just offends him. In fact, their complaining made him so angry that earlier on in chapter 11 of Numbers, that he called fire down from heaven. He shot fire all around the outskirts of their camp, just burn it all up, just kind of as a warning shot. And so what that means is that, today if you go home after church and your yard is all burnt around the edges, you need to stop complaining. God's trying to get your attention. But that is what God did. But the principle is clear. Complaining offends the heart of God. I mean, in fact, one time Moses is whining to God about the people whining to him, and he's like, God, they're complaining to me. And God says, you know what, actually, Moses, you're wrong. They may be complaining to you, but they're complaining about me. He takes it personal. It offends him. It offends his heart. The second thing that we can learn is this, is that complaining causes us to miss what God has done. We miss what he's done in our life. We miss what he's done in the past. We miss what he's doing right now. I mean, for them, it was the 10 plagues. It was the Exodus. It was the Red Sea, water from the rock, manna. And they just complain. They complain. And complaining reveals just a lack of gratitude. It reveals a lack of appreciation for everything that God has done. It reveals that our focus is just self-centered, and it's on ourselves and not him. And so whenever we become complainers and we do this, we miss what God has done and what he is doing. It's a problem. And it's offensive to God, And it blinds us to what he's doing. So what do we need to do? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So I'm going to invite you to flip over to Philippians chapter 2. And I want us to look at just a few verses here from the Apostle Paul once again, where he tells us what we need to do, why we need to do it, and how we can do it all at the same time whenever it comes to complaining. So let's look at chapter 2, verse 14. This is what Paul says. In fact, we're going to put this up here on the screen. I want us to just all read this out loud together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Do everything without grumbling or arguing. Do everything. Everything without grumbling or arguing. So what do we need to do? This is very simple, okay? Quit complaining. Okay, that is the what? We just need to quit complaining. We need to stop it. Okay, we need to stop our complaining. That is the first step, to just stop. Now, it's difficult because we don't even realize how much we complain. I remember about 15 years ago, I was a youth minister, and I took our youth group up to a CIY conference. Our students still go to those things. And that year, the study was on the book of Philippians, and we were working through a chapter every single day. And so whenever it came down to chapter 2, the verse that they really focused in on was chapter 2, verse 14, the verse we just read together. And so in our morning devotion time, what they said to do is like, okay, so throughout today, anytime you hear someone in your group complain, we want you to grab the Sharpie that we put in your bag, and we want you to mark that person's arm just one time for a complaint. Every complaint. You hear somebody complain about the food on campus, whoop, put a little mark right there. You hear somebody complain about how hot it is, whoop, put a little mark right there. Hear somebody complain about how cold it is in the auditorium, whoop, put a little mark right there. Complain about how no girl likes him, whoop, put a mark right there, okay? Just put a mark. Every single time you hear somebody complain, do that. And then whenever we got together that evening, after a whole day of just kind of keeping each other accountable with this, in our youth group time, it's like, all right, everybody, let's see each other's arms. And so everybody just kind of just like starts laying out their arms. You got some kids, it's like it's just got a few all the way up here. You got some more, it's got a little bit more than that. And you got some, it's just like up here, around the shoulders, down the other arm, down the right leg, And it's just so much complaining. And it really did something for all of us. It was just like, oh my goodness, I don't realize how much I complain. This is why it's so hard to quit complaining, because we don't realize how much we complain. So to quit it, we've got to kind of become a little bit more self-aware and just be able to go, oh, I'm complaining way too much. So here's what I want you to do. Next time you're tempted to complain, this is very simple. This is what I want you to do. I want you to bite your tongue and just don't talk. And for some of you, that means you're not going to talk a lot for the rest of the week. That's just basically what it's going to be. But we'll just talk a lot less. But just stop. Don't complain. Don't do that. Just quit doing it. And because complaining never made anything better. So just stop it. Just stop. That's what Paul says. Do everything without complaining, without grumbling or arguing. That's the what. Here's the why. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become, and this is why what you might want to underline, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. So why don't we complain? Well, it's because that's how we can become more like Jesus. We become more like Jesus whenever we are not complaining. We become blameless and pure, without fault in this world. One of the greatest testimonies that the church has is whenever the people of God aren't whiners and complainers. We testify to the greatness of God and who He is. See, one of our goals as a Christian is to become more like Jesus. We want to live like He lived, we want to love like He loved, we want to forgive as He forgave. But that just doesn't happen. We have to train ourselves. We have to pursue Him. We have to go after Him to learn to do those things. And we have to go through this internal transformation, not just this external transformation that goes place. And so while we need to learn to just bite our tongue and to stop complaining, what really needs to happen is a work inside of our heart that has to take place, because what Jesus said is, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. We need our heart to be changed, and that's how we do that, by becoming more like Him. And so that's what we need to do. That's why we don't complain, so we can become more like Jesus. So how do we do that? Verse 17 would say this: "But even if I am being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So you too should rejoice and be glad with me." This is what Paul's saying. He's like, I'm being poured out. My life is over. Whenever he's writing this, he's in prison. He's awaiting his trial before Caesar. He knows he's not going to survive this. He knows that his time on earth is coming to a close. And so he's in prison. That means he's in chains. It means he's got bad food. He's got bad company. Death is looming. And what is it that he says? You too should be glad and rejoice with me. Even in prison. Even with bad food, even with bad company, even with death looming, Paul is refusing to complain, but is instead glad and rejoicing. Now, how does Paul do that? Well, it's because he's met Jesus. That's how this happened. Paul met Jesus, and his life was transformed. His sins were forgiven, and Jesus made him a new person. Paul learned that he was no longer the center of the story, but that Jesus was. And whenever Jesus changes your life, whenever Jesus rescues you, how can you do anything but rejoice? See, rejoicing is the antidote to complaining. Gratitude is the attitude that we need to hold. So very practically, what that means is this. Don't complain about your kids. Rejoice that you have kids. Don't complain about your husband or your wife. Rejoice that you have them. Look for ways to encourage them. Look for ways to build them up. You know, whenever you come in here on a Sunday morning and you've got guys out there in orange vests kind of waving you around and trying to get you to where you need to be, to where you can park, it's very easy to just complain and to gripe and go, I can't believe I got to have somebody tell us where to park. Why can't I just park? And it's just be upset. You know, it's really easy to complain about just how hard it can be to find a parking spot sometimes. But how about this? Instead of complaining about that, how about you rejoice that you're a part of a church that has a full parking lot? Amen. That's a good thing right there. Or you're not, it's like one of the things I hear people complain to me about every once in a while. They'll be like, you know what, I just don't know everybody here. We got 4 services. It's so hard to get to know everybody. And I introduced myself to somebody for the very first time, thought they were brand new. They said, I've been coming here for 5 years. And it's really easy to complain about that. But how about instead of complaining about that, how about just thanking God? It's like, you know what? We're a church that is reaching new people left and right. And I'm glad that I don't know everybody, because if I knew everybody, it means that there would be like 7 people here. And God's doing an incredible thing. Instead of complaining about your job, how about you be grateful that you have a job? Instead of complaining about traffic, I'm still working on that one. I have no answer for you on that one, but rejoicing is the antidote to complaining. Gratitude is the attitude that we need to hold. So let's wrap it up and we'll close. So we said complaining is hazardous to our health, both our physical health and our spiritual health, and that it offends God and it causes us to miss what he's doing. So what do we need to do? We need to quit our complaining. Why do we need to do it? Because we want to become more like Jesus. And how are we going to do it? Because we're going to choose to rejoice and not complain. In fact, that's the bottom line. Start thinking instead of complaining. Just start thinking instead of complaining. The next time you're tempted to complain, give thanks instead. Heavenly Father, today we are coming to you, and this is a little bit different of a prayer because we know that we need to apologize. We're asking for your forgiveness because we know that we are people who so easily find ourselves into the complaining trap. Things don't go the way that we think they should, and so we complain. And we need today, God, just to see that our complaints, they can offend your heart. And God, that's never been our intent. So forgive us for our grumbling, forgive us for our whining, forgive us for our complaining. Forgive us for missing your blessings. Because you are a good God, and the same God that was there whenever you brought the people out of slavery in Egypt is the same God that's there that's going to provide the water, and the same God that brought us out of our own slavery to sin and has met all of our problems and has been faithful in the past is the same God that's going to be present in the present and in the future. And so, God, we apologize for whenever we forget that, and we whine and we complain. And so today we're asking for your help. Help us to make Jesus the center of our lives, the center of the story. And help us to live in a way that people would see that we are blameless and pure because of who we belong to. And that people would see Jesus in us through our gratitude and our attitude. And we pray this all in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen.